Hello, Retail Media FC. Welcome to another international episode. So today we have three continents represented here in this table. I have Benjamin Thompson. He is representing Kevel. He is from Australia. He is the VP of Global Strategy for Kevel. And I have Courtland Deering. He is the former team lead of product in retail media for Douglas, the leader of beauty in Europe. So guys, welcome to the show. Welcome to Brazil. I know you have strong connections to Brazil. I would love to hear about your connections to Brazil. And please introduce yourselves. Tell a little bit your what you've been doing in the industry. So I will start with the alphabetical order. Ben, I start with you, please.
Yeah. Thank you. So Ben Thompson. Recently joined Kevel, but for the last 11 years, I was working for the Woolworths and for the Endeavour Group in Australia. Australia, you cannot sell alcohol in the supermarket. You have to sell it in a dedicated store. And I worked in the alcohol division of the Woolworths Group, where we had about half the market, and you have 1,600 to 2,000 stores that sell only wine, beer, and alcohol. So that's where I was for the last 11 years in different parts of the Woolworths and Endeavour Group. And we actually started retail media in Australia back in 2017, towards the end of 2017, 18. As for Brazil, I've been here a few times. I spoke at e-commerce Brazil, once in Porto Alegre and once in Sao Paulo. I have a lot of friends here. When I used to work in Southeast Asia, my housemate was from Campinas, and so I had a lot of connections when I first started coming here on holiday.
And you are a huge fan of Carnaval in Salvador.
Yes, I just got back from Salvador. Actually, I've still got some things on me from Salvador, but I was there for the full 6 days. I went Thursday to Tuesday.
Wow, cool. Courtland, nice to have you here. Please introduce yourself, tell a little bit your connections to Brazil and your professional background.
Thank you for having me. So I'm Courtland Deering. I've been working at Douglas for around 5 years. I was the first tech hire into the retail media organization, where the first task was to migrate from Craylytics to Criteo and expand the portfolio of retail media from just being on-site to several different product streams. And in that role, I led a team of 4 people, and we became, I would say, a very strong retail media network, offering both in-store, on-site, email, product sampling, data. So we had our hands in all the different retail media product streams. And my connection to Brazil is actually my spouse is Brazilian Spanish. So we come to Brazil every now and then to see family and friends in Brazil.
Wow. So we will have to record again next year in Portuguese, okay? So you'll have to practice a lot with your spouse, and next year we'll have an Portuguese episode with you.
Exactly. Let's do it.
I would like to start with a very easy question. What companies, and I will start with you now, Courtland, what is the most underestimated topic when a company, like a retailer, they want to start on retail media? What they usually underestimate, or what you have seen being underestimated during your experience?
Yeah, I would say 2 things. One of them being the order to cash system, so how you actually get paid by advertisers, and the other one being general alignment strategically within the organization. So the order to cash system is so important and so different from what retailers usually do, because very close relationships retailers have with their suppliers, they don't necessarily need a dunning system to make sure that they get paid on time. But advertising is a bit different when you're dealing with multiple different agencies representing brand's advertising budget. You want to make sure that you're getting paid on time for the work that you're doing. And the orchestration of how that happens especially with limited accounting resources when you're starting up a retail media network, is super important that you think about this through and you orchestrate it in a way that is as automated as possible, so everyone gets paid on time and everyone is happy. The strategic alignment is the other part that I would say people underestimate. Retail media networks, when they start out, they really need to draw from all the resources of the retail organization in order to make it as successful as possible. And you need to have everyone across the entire organization buy in, and that cannot just be the global headquarter. It has to also be all the country organizations. So then if you're working for a really global retailer, then you have to deal with 20 plus different cultures and expectations around communication and organization and planning and presentations that really needs to happen, and the organization needs to be aligned in order to really launch a retail media network successfully and grow it over time.
I would say same here, like especially in Brazil, we have like some issues with taxes is also something that people underestimate, like how they need to have a different type of companies, like because one thing is selling goods, like other thing is selling ads. So there's different type of taxes, whatever. This is the boring part of the business. But keeping the momentum, Ben, it's on you.
Yeah, I mean, I would say quite similar to the last point that was made. Probably building in a bit in people underestimate how important it is to think about where it sits, who it reports to, and will it stay there or does it move to different parts? What are going to be the enablers within the business to the point around alignment, and what could be the blockers? And also, what is the reason that you're doing it? I think people underestimate how important that can be and how that can shape your potential with it. Because if you're just doing it because you've heard about it and you want a bit of money into your product margin, I mean that's if that's your business strategy, fine, go for it. But then you're missing out on what you could be doing with it. So if you're thinking about it from a point of view, it's like, well, with this new money coming in, what do we want to do for our customers or for each other or for the business that we can't do right now that this money could enable? And how could we turn that so that those things, as we grow that money, it helps another part of the business, and as that part of the business is helped, it creates more opportunities to grow more money. Then you can create something that's more kind of self-perpetuating, like a flywheel, and you can do a lot more and you can improve as a business. And I think people underestimate the potential of being able to do that, assuming they've got all the right things in place to be able to maximize a retail media network. Like for example, when we started, we actually started because we had very old school fixed marketing budgets, and like we had half of the alcohol traffic in Australia going through one of the websites, and Australians like to drink certain times of the year. Everybody is in market trying to buy alcohol, but we weren't capturing a lot of the demand because the marketing budget hit its limit and it stopped. We knew that Amazon had sponsored ads. Had heard of this. I started chatting to some like Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, or one of our suppliers, I think, and they said, "Yeah, we're doing something like that with a retailer in the UK," and then looked for the platforms that could do it. And then originally we set that up, put that in. But the reason for doing that was so that we could keep on capturing demand, and not lose out when people are actually looking to buy something. And so, like along the way, we lost that, regained that kind of higher purpose for it. But that really can shape the what the potential could be for retail media, depending on how you think about it.
Before going to Courtland, Ben. Tell me a little bit. You mentioned like marketing budgets, or marketing or trade marketing, or which budget was it like mostly?
So initially, we started like that. Initially, we ended up being successful with the long tail because we just launched online only for small retailers, small providers, like wineries, importers who couldn't get into our store network. and they didn't have a budget to do a lot of marketing, but suddenly this option to be able to bid on a few keywords, that was affordable for them. So we actually started with a lot of that, and we started with one or two of the big partners who already were doing it in another market. This was extremely successful. We then used that to increase to lift the budgets on the marketing. That led us to capture more demand. That grew. E-com reversed the growth trend. It was a great success story, and it kind of bubbled along for a while. But then the merchant team were like, well, wait a second. Like, now you're taking money out of my KPIs. You're taking money out of my product margin. Like that, I was already getting that money. Now they're giving me less because they said they're giving it to you. So then it hit a roadblock for a period of time until we resolved this, because we could grow a bit with the ones who wanted to, but the digital marketing team didn't have a sales team to go out, didn't have the relations, it couldn't scale it, and the merchant team didn't want to because it wasn't going to them. It was going to the online P&L. So I mean, that's what led us to, okay, well, if we want to relaunch this and do it properly, it needs to sit with the merchant team. And then if it sits with them and it goes into their bucket, then they won't block it. Gotcha. And then there's more. That this story then continues, because that can be fine for a while, but if it's only going to be product margin, they're not going to care about. They don't have the time or the KPI to put effort into the format, the relevancy. And so then the merchant team can't scale more because suddenly marketing become the blocker. So depending on the journey, a different department could be the blocker or the enabler on growth. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, definitely. No, the thing is what we have some people here, this is, I would say this is not new but one of the things that happens, someone come and the shopper, the trade or whatever department comes with a large budget, and they say, hey, why you start, the CMO and the marketing starts to realize that this new budget is going through another department that is not the marketing team. So that's why retail media was getting some attention from CMOs, and now CMOs are talking about this, and they now realize that the importance of retail media. But I would like to get the other topic that you mentioned, building the flywheel. Why doing? Why start doing retail media? What are the benefits beyond the investments, the brand investments, the advertisement investments, beyond the money? What is the other values that you can create this flywheel that brings value to whatever? I would like to listen from you.
I'll probably give a couple of examples, and we had different retailers in the portfolio, and so different examples can correspond to different ones. But some retailers got very low margin, and during COVID, people didn't want to go into stores, and Australia was one of the most locked down countries in the world, if not the most. But to deliver and to increase the percentage of your e-com suddenly overnight, we were doing volumes that for Christmas level volumes, which normally we prepare for 2 months for, were happening overnight. To be able to afford that, you need more money. Right. And so using retail media money in that example, that's an example where retail media money can help you afford to carry on doing the picking for your customers, or to carry on providing a better service in e-com. Another brand, or another situation, and these are real situations, cost of living crisis. Right. And if your brand ethos and one of your reasons for being is to make certain things more affordable, and that's part of who you are as a retailer, that can be a reason for being for your retail media. How do we collaborate better with our partners on media so that we can still afford to deliver the prices? I mean, there's a lot of examples, I think, with there's a lot of in-store examples as well that you can think about in that sense. You can improve the in-store experience with certain technology. But that same technology is expensive, but that same technology provides you tracking, or it provides you space to advertise, or it allows you to do better, more SKU level pricing. And so by thinking about your technology investments with this kind of double lens, you can do more and create more. And that might be for the customer's benefit. It might be for your team's benefit to make their life easier by deploying more tools for them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. So I would suggest you, both of you, to visit the Magalu store in close to Avenida Paulista. The CEO told not here, but in other podcasts, that it was enabled, this store, which is a flagship, which is very beautiful, many LED panels. It was enabled by retail media. It was enabled by the investments from brands, and it's like a very interesting business case.
I think that makes perfect sense. A lot of organizations don't talk so deeply about where the EBITDA bottom line contribution actually ends up and flows into. But somehow when you have this business unit that is so profitable, that is driving so much cash flow, so much bottom line contribution, that it really helps fund other areas of innovation around the retail organization. The retail mantra has always been about customer obsession, but somewhere along the line, I think a lot of retailers also forgot about serving their suppliers and partnering well with their suppliers and providing services to different brands and advertisers that they want to work with. And retail media as a business unit within a retail organization can really change a bit of that mindset to steer innovation towards even improving customer experience within the shopper experience, whether it's elevated e-commerce website or new innovations in store with digital technologies, or even building a mixed media model within a retail organization that can help drive more efficiently conversions for brands. Because in the end of the day, the retailers and the brands want the same thing, and that's for products to move off the shelves. And retail media is really good at bringing innovation to how we do that in a more efficient and effective way.
I think that's a really good point, because and that's why we kind of touched it, where it was in merchandising, but then had to go to marketing at some point. And then one of the aha moments was when, you know, the marketing team wanted to get certain upgrades to the targeting and audience technology, but the business case wasn't going through due to the period of time we were in. And I was like, you know that the retail media team also want this same platform. Actually, I think you're looking at. Why don't you two guys come together, and you've both got a use for it? And they both went together and they started using one of those platforms, because they're often it's the same technologies, because everything that you want to use to make things relevant, personal, etc. for customer marketing is the same thing that you'd want to use if you're marketing on behalf of your brand partners.
I have a good example for that one. So investing in high quality digital screens across your retail network of stores can be a multi-million euro capex invest. But if the marketing team went and did that alone, or the store design team did that alone, it would just be a cost. But with retail media on top, it can become one of the most attractive business cases that have been presented to that board that year.
We had one very similar with electronic shelf ticket labels.
Yeah.
One of the businesses had a proactive price guarantee. So it would change prices in the morning every day if it found somebody more expensive within a kilometer radius of the stores. Now, when this was paper, you could imagine that was costing a lot. But the business case to turn it around just on labor alone was very, very on the line. But with the newer shelf edges, that they've got sensors, so you can see flow through. So that it has a store benefit, and that has a like an attribution or an audience benefit. They have space. They have rich media to put advertising on. So they become inventory with a level of measurement, and you can connect your AI pricing to it. So then you could like get sharper on the pricing. So like, no, I'm not saying it sounds like I'm painting a perfect world. You have to get those teams together. You have to get them to talk. You have to get them to join up their roadmaps. It's really hard getting to do that, and that can be underestimated. But there were some great examples we had on kind of like realizing the potential if you kind of link those areas up.
Este podcast tem patrocínio da Mega Mídia, especialista em potencializar resultados com inteligência no ponto de venda. Se sua empresa quer transformar o varejo em um canal de mídia lucrativo, com estratégia, execução e resultado, vale conhecer a Mega Mídia, especialista em trade marketing e retail media. A Mega também entrega soluções como digital signage, rádio indoor e ativações que fazem o ponto de venda vender de verdade. megamedia.com.br. In the end, it's like retail media being able to help solve a problem.
Yeah.
Or otherwise it's going to be like a cost or something that is not going to add any value. So now the cost is gone, the value is there. So why not the perfect word? Like Ben, you just said, for me, it's a perfect word.
No, I guess what I meant was I sound like we were operating perfectly. We had a lot of roadblocks and hurdles along the way. But I was more talking about the intent versus the execution. Execution
I got you.
Is hard.
Yeah, it's not easy, but the vision is there and the vision is good.
Yeah, retail is a execution business, right? I think it's, for me, my opinion, like retail is an execution. Like sometimes, like the execution eats the strategy breakfast. So, Courtland, you started mentioning like some formats, and I got really interested. But before we go in other formats, there's a huge discussion here about in-store. So what is your vision? Why there is like an imbalance between online budgets and in-store? I believe Australia or German or Europe, at least 75% of the sales are offline. So the budget is online, the sales are offline. Like the majority of the budget is so there is this imbalance. Why? And how to fix it?
In-store is such an interesting area because I think there's so many different factors that led to where it is today. One being most of the major retailers started their retail media business during lockdowns and COVID. So it made sense that they would start with the online business first. Also, a lot of the people who were hired to run retail media networks come from a digital advertising background. The in-store environment is kind of a scary place where they have to learn a little bit more about retail and operations and physical spaces that they had no idea about before. And also the investment in putting sponsored product ads live or a banner on an e-commerce website is so much lower and so much easier than installing a €7,000 75-inch HD screen connected to data and technology. But the potential is really interesting and it's really there. And a lot of retailers in Europe especially are really going deep into the in-store environment. I think what retailers in Europe are trying to do is they're trying to leverage the data that they have within the store environment and not just reproduce what you see in typical digital out of home where you buy impressions in like a neighborhood that has some data from census or whatever that tells like the average income of that area or whatever. But retailers are trying to do it a little bit more sophisticated by digging into their purchase data, knowing what store profiles they have within their network. Some stores in the beauty world may perform better in makeup, others may perform better in perfumes. You can have a data strategy there that allows those perfume brands to play out their perfume campaigns in stores that index higher for perfume. And then there's a lot of other data. One of the more interesting things that we found out while launching in-store at Douglas is that our retail team were actually using very sophisticated technology from a third-party vendor that tracks mobile IDs within shopping streets and has really rich data around those users. And they use that to understand where to put their next store. So we were able to take that data from that third-party vendor and use it in a whole different way to enrich the audience insights around the passerbys of the stores for our window screens. So that is something I think that retailers in Europe are definitely looking into. There's also a lot more complex in-store analytics that many retailers are trying to experiment on, such as like using sensors or CCTV, computer vision to understand the flows of shoppers to have better attributions. But this is all really difficult in Europe because of data privacy regulations. But people are exploring compliant ways of not like storing the data, but like stripping the metadata from what the sensor or the CCTV sees and create some anonymized profile around it. So there's huge potential there. And I'm really excited to see where retailers end up in the in-store space and how data-driven it can be, because it's, in my opinion, it's not good enough if they just rely on the same standard that digital out-of-home had previously. But they should try to improve and raise the bar.
Esse episódio é um patrocínio de AppsFlyer. A AppsFlyer é líder global em mensuração e colaboração de dados, com expertise no suporte às maiores marcas do mundo. A Data Collaboration Platform da AppsFlyer permite que varejistas e anunciantes compartilhem dados de forma segura, criem audiências sem precisar escrever uma única linha de código e mensurem o impacto real em vendas em mobile, web e connected TV. Tudo em um ambiente neutro e seguro do ponto de vista de privacidade. Se a sua empresa está pronta para destravar todo o valor de seus dados primários, fale com a AppsFlyer. I have like one take about this. I think when you I have like digital media buying background, so I used to work on the side, and when we think about a different channel, it's very hard I will need to create another banner or another. I will need a new creative. I will need something else. Now we have AI. It's easier, but it's not only repurpose. Like, it's not only getting your banner that is working on Facebook or whatever, or your TV advertising and send it to you in store. It's not going to work. So it's not going to work. We know that's not going to work. So there is a new challenge that becomes a friction, because you need to have a new asset to get in the screen. So I think is one of the most difficult. I would say it's a friction. And when they try, when they advertise, they try something on in-store, and then they say, oh, it's a poor performance. Like, whatever you do, if you can target properly, you can be in the close to the decision making. But if your content is not good, it's not gonna work, and you have poor performance. So
I've seen. I was at NRF in New York recently, and I saw it was a multi-year study, but in collaboration with the university, where they were testing what kind of creatives under what circumstances worked in store, and there were a few pieces around. They talked a lot to the content. They also talked to what I think they called hedonistic products. So products that are more kind of like in your enjoyment, in your discretionary income bucket. They often work because they give you that inspiration that you weren't there for that, but then they give you the new idea, versus things that you have to buy anyway because you're kind of there to buy them anyway. But what I also think is interesting for in store, it starts to become what's interesting for brands, and then also for the retailers. It's all the things that you want from like digital out of home or rich media, large formats, but with the added advantage of being closer to the purchase and measurement. And I think that's you're able to combine the best of both worlds if you do it properly. And I think Europe's taken the lead on some of that. But what I will say is, like, the over-indexing on digital first in markets like the US, what that's done is train all of the retail media to not accept ambiguous measurement, or to really focus on like measurement, treating the store like a website, expecting to be able to understand, manage, optimize a store like a website. And I think with that foundation, that expectation, they're well positioned then to with all the new technologies that are becoming available, like some of the ones that you mentioned, they're very positioned well to then take to that next level. And then suddenly the trade budget versus brand budget that we were talking to becomes a different conversation. Then you're like, okay, well, currently your brand budget is spending money on these rich formats, upper funnel content, and you get this many people walking by in your digital out of home. Well, if you invest in this store network advertising, you get the same number of people, but you also get this measurement, this audience. We have a loyalty program. We have a really high scan rate, so you get a level of understanding of who's watching it. You suddenly get all these things that you weren't getting before, and then like it doesn't become the cannibalization topic anymore, because suddenly the brand teams are making the decision. Well, I can do what I was doing, but with a bunch of other benefits that I didn't get before.
Yeah, suddenly they have like a way better.
Yeah,
a way better channel.
I was looking at in-store retail media also in Brazil when I've been shopping here. I'm not going to name the retailer's name, but it was a large big box grocery retailer. That's as much information as I'll give. But I was walking through the store and I seen these activations throughout the store. There was a lot of different activations in different parts of the store. And what I found really interesting is that what I assumed to be trade budgets, the activations were done with a significantly higher quality and a higher standard of activation. It seemed like a lot more care was put into it. And then when I look at the retail media parts, I see LED frames that are like partially peeling off from the glue at the end caps, and not necessarily done with a lot of thought and strategy behind it. Sometimes the end caps showed all the same ads. Sometimes it was mixed. It didn't seem like there was a strategy, or maybe there was a strategy to play multiple end caps at the same time for the same ad. And like the context of what type of brand should go on the end cap, it seemed a little bit random. Whereas the trade marketing activations were really intentional. And I think what retailers in Europe are really considering is that whatever retail media activation happens in store, it cannot bring down the quality of the user experience. It needs to elevate the shopping experience with whatever we're doing. So if that means that the ad at the end cap needs to align with the content within either of the two aisles or the neighboring sections, then that is something I think retailers in Europe are prepared to sacrifice a little bit on the business case to maintain an elevated shopping experience.
A Kevel é a infraestrutura por trás de alguma das principais redes de retail media do mundo. Com tecnologia baseada em APIs e inteligência artificial, a Kevel permite que varejistas construam sua própria plataforma de mídia, com total controle sobre seus dados primários, sem depender de soluções engessadas. Mais do que uma empresa de software as a service, a Kevel é uma empresa orientada ao sucesso do cliente. A tecnologia é um meio, a parceria é o diferencial. Varejistas como Chewy, The Home Depot, Dollar General, Sonai, Lyft e El Corte Inglês já utilizam Kevel para lançar e escalar as suas operações de retail media. Kevel, tecnologia, controle e crescimento real em retail media. And I would like to bring a little bit the advertisers' perspective to this conversation, and talk a little bit about formats, because we always talk like it's like in store online and offsite. Like it seems like there are only three things, three small channels, like sub channels inside the retail media. But there are so many formats, interesting formats, and you also mentioned sampling, which I am a huge fan of sampling, especially in the industry of beauty industry. I would like to hear from you, like how an advertiser can create his strategy using the formats. Like if they go whatever goal they have, which format they should use, which they should avoid, what they should like focus on. I would listen, especially with your expertise from what works, what doesn't work. So what I can start with Ben, but what would like to listen a little bit from you about it.
I probably, Douglas probably has a lot more direct expertise on individual formats, but I did want to pick up what you mentioned, sampling, and I have seen some startups being able to programmatically deliver sampling in some types of environments. They've worked on. There was a technology piece to do, and so it needs to be done with online orders. But then there was a business model piece to do. But I've seen a couple of companies where they've actually figured out a way to be able to enable sampling. It's not a sample size; it's a full size, but it gets added to the baskets of certain customers who meet certain criteria, and that's just it's done as a media cost. And that works for everybody. The customer gets free product. The brand advertiser isn't like, it fits into their regular fulfillment. You know, they don't have to send samples. You know, it becomes another product in the store, and they figured out a way to do the payment so that it doesn't disrupt any of that. So sampling, I think, will be on the way. I've seen a couple of examples of that happening already.
Yeah,
Cool.
when we launched sampling, we really wanted to do it that way, but the regulatory environment of Europe doesn't let you add a product into a cart, even if it's for free, even if the user really would love to have a full-sized product of a luxury beauty brand. It's not allowed.
Oh.
So how we ended up doing it is we had to work with a third-party logistic provider to send out samples based on an application that shoppers do within our website. But it was really exciting in a way that it created a whole new ecosystem within the retail site, that people were going to our website and going to the part where it talks about different retail media sampling campaigns that are happening, and these were some of the highest trafficked pages, and then those users would go on to also purchase stuff on the website while they were there, because they were beauty shoppers anyway. And what was really cute is that there were so many viral TikToks of like teenage girls explaining to other girls on how they can apply for these samples. But going back to the question on formats and how an advertiser should approach different retail media formats, they really need to have a strong understanding of where their brand sits within that retail ecosystem. For example, if you are an unknown brand, maybe you're a marketplace vendor, you're very long tail, maybe your GMV is under 100,000 euros, then sponsor product ads are not necessarily always going to work for you, because no one knows who you are, no one knows your product. They're not going to click and they're not going to buy it just because it's been promoted. And what we've seen is that brands need to understand where they are within the retail media ecosystem to have a appropriate mix. Like if they're at the stage of their brand maturity where they need more awareness, more influencers, whatever, to get their brand out there, they need to make that investment before their sponsored product ads will start working. Because why would someone click, for example, an unknown fragrance when there's a top seller also buying retail media and is able to outbid you on a CPC basis and still maintain a higher return on ad spend than what you're ever able to do?
Gotcha. I love it that you brought some new technologies. Like I've never heard about this programmatic sampling. So I would love if you remember anything else like related to new.
I think they're called Swish Bix or something. Is the one I saw. Swish Bix, Swish, and then BX. I think.
We do have something very interesting here in Brazil. Like we have a company named Mimo. They basically they send like they bring traffic to store. Like they go to store. You have like a Mimo. It's like Mimo is like a gift. It's a popular name of saying gift, kind of a slang or whatever. So they and you have the time to go to the store. So you're not going to the rush hour. So you're going to whatever Ben, Courtland, you can go to whatever of our store, get your. So you will go in there and you will definitely buy another thing, and it's free. Now they're launching a pilot with a pet store. It's very interesting and funded by the industry. So the industry is
so then you to get that that gift, you have to go within certain hours.
Exactly.
Yeah, I really love that as an idea, but as someone who was responsible for coming up and orchestrating how all these things work process-wise, the logistics of making that work within a retail environment to make sure that you're not sending someone to go to a store where that sample is no longer there is super important. But it's hard to make sure that you have the right samples in the right stores and the right people visiting those stores and having that all work out correctly. It's so difficult.
It made me think of it be a good way to regulate demand, though. If you had that working at scale, then you could start like pushing it up when you have times when the stores are going to be too busy, and dialing it back and not having it at certain times. It sounds like again a dual benefit potential there if executed properly, as you said.
It sounds really exciting if the execution works out.
Yeah, execution, as we said, like retail is execution business. Retail media can be also a challenge of execution. And I would like to see like what is your perspective about like your continent, like the country that you come from or the continent. What do you see like it's working very well on retail media, and what's not working very well? And I will start with this. Like I will try to answer this for especially for Brazil. I think we have a challenge because it's a very fragmented world. It's a very fragmented market. We also there are retailers that they don't have like they're not delivering not the right data, but they don't have a level of maturity to give back some report or some data to the advertisers. However, we are very creative and very open. So there are lots of good cases, like companies that are exploring the assets and the opportunities in retail media. This is I would say from Brazil. Courtland, if you want to.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges of operating within Europe is that there's just so many different countries, so many different laws. Even for European directives, each country interprets it a little bit differently. So you have to have a little bit of a modification in each country that you roll out to, and languages, culture, etc. It makes it a lot more challenging to harmonize a portfolio across all your markets, especially when you have something that exists legacy within each of the markets. And each of those legacy propositions are different from each of the markets because they had their own marketing organization within each of the countries, because every country has its own incorporation.
Gotcha.
Australia is probably quite different in some ways. You know, well, it's talked about a lot that in the US, the percentage of retail media revenue that is all going to one very large online online retailer is huge. When you look at that pie chart, it's like 75-80%, and no one's predicting that will change. Now in Australia, that online retailer is 10 years behind where they are, 5 years, 10 years behind where they are in the US, and you have some very large. You have a lot of duopoly industries. So I think in Australia's case, the challenge is them being ambitious and fast enough to really lean into what retail media can do and play both, like, which will defend against the kind of that pie chart becoming like the US and only in one place, and it will also could create and reinvent new shopping experiences by everything we talked about when you combine the kind of two sets of money and the cooperation together. So I think that market is probably needs to have some of the same creativity that you've talked about in Brazil, or the same kind of innovation aggression that you get in markets like the US.
We talked about formats a little earlier, but we talked about a lot of sampling. But is there anything else that you would like to say about formats? Because I think it's very interesting to sometimes we underestimate what advertisers underestimate what they will how they will create their strategy through formats, and also retailers underestimate what they will focus on offering their offerings of formats offerings to advertisers. So is there anything else that you'd like to say, because we went further on?
Sorry.
Yeah. So for the past couple years, it's all been about sponsored product ads and on-site. Now the whole entire discussion is around in-store, primarily focusing around digital screens, and I think it'll still be talking about digital screens heavily for the next 2 to 3 years. But then after that, there are some other product streams that are vying for their time in the spotlight. The experiential product sampling is one of them, which could be digital or in-store. There's the whole data monetization part, which could be better insights around e-commerce, connecting to sellout data, connecting to CRM inside of a dashboard. And then there's the whole entire offsite piece, which I would say is very developed in the US, but still is a lot more nascent within Europe, of using retail data to target shoppers across the open internet, or partnering with large DSPs in order to have your audiences natively available for advertisers to target. So I think the offsite part already had its conversation, or has had a big conversation within the US, but I think it will have a conversation in Europe in the next years as well.
I was going to say that all the rules of marketing still apply, right? It's still all it's not just, but it's still all marketing. So if people want rich, immersive formats to understand the story of a new brand, or if you as a brand want to tell that story and you would do that in your own marketing, why wouldn't you want to do that in your digital marketing? And then from the retailer side, then what they need to be able to do then is be able to offer that and have those formats and spaces available, and partner with platforms that have got that flexibility to be able to keep changing with the demands of what formats are needed. A long time ago, like you didn't need 6-second videos. That wasn't the expectation. Now people like them. You want them. Brands will want to use those, and even more recently, it wasn't financially possible to scale personalized long form video content. Now with Gen AI and AI, it is, and so it's I think it's important for retailers to be able to set themselves up so they're able to lean into all of the changing kind of demands they've got on targeting and formats that brands will want. because it's at the end of the day, it's still marketing. It needs to be not a trade-off between, okay, do I show my rich format or this static ad? You need to be able to do both. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me too. I've been thinking a lot about commerce media versus retail media in terms of what formats and what offerings and how each different player can position itself. And retail media has the blessing and the curse of sponsored product ads, which is a very low funnel, easy to invest in format. Whereas commerce media players like an airline or delivery service doesn't necessarily have. And what is exciting in the commerce media space, as it's still developing and quite nascent, I see a lot of major players like PayPal just launching in Germany, starting to build their proposition. They have the opportunity, since they're separated from the sponsored product ad conversation, to really go high funnel, full branded experiences and allow for really rich storytelling. So it's going to be really exciting as commerce media develops and takes hold and gets its fair share of media budgets, to see how the flavor of retail data, of commerce data, flows into these higher upper funnel formats and these rich brand storytelling experiences.
And I think it's an interesting point that you raise, because within a brand there'll be finance teams, the CMO will be fighting for like how they divide the budget up between performance versus storytelling. And with retail media, they can add measurement and attribution to the storytelling. And so it could, with the right collaborations between retailers and brands, you could end up with a kind of an improvement in formats across the board if done properly.
Wow. Good that we are here talking about this, because I would like to talk about, we should discuss a little bit more of data collaboration, or data clean rooms, data collaboration, how companies, and I believe L'Oreal for Douglas would be like one of the most important or the most important advertiser. And I know they are pretty advanced on this. I would love to hear what the companies are doing, what are the use cases, and I would love to hear, like, Ben. If you have experience, if you have run anything related or not so much.
We had to get it. We had to get over a hurdle at one point because we were very protective of data, and by calling it data collaboration or data sharing, it got blocked before the conversation could be had. So we kind of changed the name of it to be around like we took the word data out, and we were calling it. It's more like just like collaborating on like customer collaboration, information collaboration, etc. To get over that hurdle. So even sometimes the sticking point of the word, but I think that retailers have different data to brands, and therefore, so long as you can find a way to do it ethically, morally, legally, in more regulated spaces, that you've got a real opportunity to improve both the experience and then the efficiency and efficacy if you collaborate with the data that the retailer's got on their customer and their inventory and their stock, etc. Combine that with the data that the brand has got from the market and from the product.
The very first time I was pitching before the board at Douglas, it was around the topic of data collaboration. So it was a very fun one to really talk about. But we always knew that data collaboration was a really rich product line to explore as a retail media network, because it's scalable. It is FTE light, so you don't need to hire a lot of people to use it. And it's also self-service and what the brands ultimately want. They want to take control of their advertising budgets, especially when they have in-house capabilities like L'Oreal often does. L'Oreal indeed is a really good example, because I think they're around one of the most sophisticated advertisers in the world, and they're definitely exploring data collaborations with large retailers. I know that they've successfully done some with retailers, especially in France, where they got insights around shoppers and how to target and advertise them better, so that they were able to successfully grow the category within this retailer for their mass product division, their consumer product division. And doing data clean rooms in general within Europe is really complicated because we have GDPR, which has a lot of strict data requirements around it to successfully pull it off. It's also different for every market that you're doing in. You have to find the right partner. Also, like, depending on the data clean room where their servers are hosted, if they're hosted in the US, and then if they're hosted in the US, then there's usually a clause within these contracts that the US government is able to access this data in like extreme circumstances. But even if it's an edge case that never happens, it kind of stops the conversation there. So you need to find local partners, and then you need to find a local partner that has the sophistication and the technological capability to actually guide you through this experience, because it's quite complicated. I also know from some conversations that I had with people working in agencies for retailers, but not in a retail media multi-brand kind of context, there are interesting things being done there. One example that I know of is that in Germany, IKEA, through an agency, partnered with eBay. So eBay Kleinanzeigen is in Germany, to have insights around users who are buying IKEA furniture secondhand, to be able to target those users and bring them back to the first party market instead of the resale market. And that, I heard, was quite successful for them. So that was a very interesting use case, but I'm not sure if any case studies exist online where you could really learn about it. But people are doing cool things. It's just a little bit under the radar right now because everyone's a little bit concerned about how the data privacy is and how it holds up, because a lot of these things that you do as well, these laws aren't set in stone with clear guidance. They're open to interpretation based on what the local regulators deem as correct or incorrect. And you only really know what is the true interpretation of the policy when it's been through the courts and someone has been sued for 75 million euros or whatever it is. It's I think a GDPR violation can be like 4% of the company's revenue.
Yeah.
So
we
scary.
have the same rules here. It's named LGPD. It's just like GDPR translated to Brazilian Portuguese, just like this. Basically, it's very similar, very, very close. But I think it's gonna be, as you said, like there's a lot of room for growth on data collaboration, and I'm curious to see how creativity can like flourish and find use cases and things like this. So if you have some, like, would love to you remember any other, like, beyond the IKEA and eBay? Or
I know for sophisticated advertisers like L'Oreal, what makes their data collaboration vision so compelling is it's not just about driving shoppers more efficiently to the store that will buy L'Oreal products, but they're really interested in expanding the category, so bringing in net new shoppers. So men to derma cosmetics, so they can buy La Roche-Posay or something like this, not necessarily targeting the men that are already buying that product, but really driving new shoppers to a retailer. And I think that's the kind of angle that really excites retailers as well, because it incentivizes multiple parts of the organization to get behind this very scary activation of sharing data with the supplier and dealing with the ambiguity of trust to make sure that the data is not misused or things are interpreted the same way for every edge case of the activation, and data isn't triangulated to learn something new about something else. So I think there is a lot of really interesting use cases there, but the ones in retail media that I see taking off first is when you're working with a sophisticated advertiser that is interested in category expansion.
Cool.
I don't have as many in-depth examples, but I mean, this one I guess is the result of some level of data collaboration. But there's one of the larger convenience store chains in Japan. They spoke at NRF APAC, and they explained how 70% of their retail media was non-endemic, was products they did not sell, because everybody goes to a convenience store. And so a convenience store brand, which is a cheapish brand, was getting retail media revenue from high-end luxury brands. And after a period of time of doing this, they started to do collaborations on product with each other. So you had like a collection of whatever the high-end brand was, but inside being sold inside a convenience store.
That's super interesting.
And that would have been the result of a level of data collaboration. I don't have the details on it, but it's
I can see kind of like the parallels between like travel retail and maybe at a convenience store that has a gas station or whatever. Similar smaller products can be leveraged, and if you have insights around the shoppers that go to a certain convenience store, their profile, then you can also do new product development around that. I think that's super interesting. The conversation in Europe, I haven't heard many people talking about new product development as like, how are we going to orchestrate retail data in a way that helps our suppliers develop their next product? But I think that's super interesting because obviously it's working really well for some retailers that are really doing strong offerings and strong developments within their own private label environment.
Cool. Guys, going to the end, like I will ask you very briefly, what deserves a red card in retail media industry? And if you have any final considerations to say, anything else to say? I think you want to say.
No, I'm trying to think.
Okay, I will start with Courtland.
Well, I would say my red card is going to be the agentic commerce and the AI commerce and agents in advertising conversation that's happening right now. I think a lot of people are jumping to conclusions without there actually being something on the table to look at and analyze. You have everything from people saying that agentic commerce is going to be the end of retail media because it gets rid of the journey on the store or e-commerce environment. And then you have the complete opposite take of that. When you have access to all the information, curation and retail media's role in that is going to be more important than ever. And when you have both extreme both sides of the argument that are completely opposite to each other existing, it means that no one actually knows what is happening. And I think people need to see what the first looks of advertising within the agentic space, or what the user adoption of agentic advertising or agentic shopping is going to be.
Interesting. Yeah, no, we were doing a lot of, before I came over to Kevel, we were doing a lot of talk on agentic and its role. And I think, you know, if people are doing their shopping in a large language model or with an agent, they're doing it because it's either easier or more pleasant to do it, right? So then the onus becomes on the retailer to take what's good about that experience and replicate it within your own environment, because with your stock data, with your real-time with your own personal data, with your relationship with the customer would still prefer to do that within there's still advantages, let's say, to do that within a retail-owned environment. And then within that environment, there becomes a need for or becomes an opportunity for spaces and advertising. And then you need to think about, well, to be able to do that, what do we need? And then start looking at what you need. And then again, it will be around It'll be product data, I think, will become really important in this particular situation. And again, flexible formats, because if the format's constantly changing, because you need to mimic or reproduce the same experience that's available in one of those, with one of those agents or one of those LLMs, then you're going to need a platform behind you that's able to cope with that constant change. But yeah, I think it's I do share your kind of my red card would go to the defeatist conversations, or the extremist of those conversations in a similar way, because when you get one person saying, okay, this is going to end everything, and then somebody else say, you don't even need to worry about it. What happens is nobody then sits down and tries to nobody sits down and tries to adapt and figure it out. And I think it's very dangerous for groups to come in and say, okay, no, agentic will only be for toilet paper or whatever, because that will get people complacent. At the same time, going in and saying it's gonna end the world creates the wrong mindset as well, and people lose focus and they don't look at the right things. So yeah, probably a red card of a similar theme.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a topic and it's going to be interesting, but how relevant it will be for every retailer is still yet to be decided. We know I think it's Sensor Tower is the company. I'm not sure exactly, but I read a post on LinkedIn recently about Rufus's performance within agentic conversations, and it's been super significant for Amazon. So that is really interesting, because a lot of retailers tried to do something with chatbots and kind of the product was shelved before it actually got its own feet. But maybe it's something to look into a little bit deeper on how this whole entire new way of shopping, new way of making purchases actually pans out.
Guys, I love it. I had like a great time. I think it was a great episode. Like, if you have any final thoughts, I have to finish, but I would stay here for a long time. With this conversation was so interesting, so meaningful, with lots of good ideas being shared and exchanged. I really appreciate this. Appreciate your time, for both of you, Ben, Courtland. And if you have any final thoughts, I would like to thank you so much. Ask for everybody to keep listening, to stay tuned to Retail Media FC. So I would like to thank you. Final thoughts. Would like to thank you so much.
I mean, I can go. Thank you also. Thank you both of you. I learn a lot from you. Also, Courtland, as well as you, Herik. I re-emphasizing the point around how quickly everything's changing, and then the most important thing is how prepared you are to adapt to change, and what are the things that you do to and the partners that you work with to future-proof yourself on change, because the change keeps everyone. And I know everyone says it, but it does. Like, even a couple of months ago, the capabilities that they just keep on accelerating. So it's the ability to adapt to change is going to be much more important than many other things, I think, moving forward.
I agree.
Yeah, I would say thank you as well for having me. It's really been interesting to explore the retail media landscape for Brazil while I've been here as well. I think a lot of partners are starting to get their footing, and it's really interesting to see how they approach retail media versus how Europe and other markets have as well. And I think there's a lot of opportunity here with different apps, different commerce players, different e-commerce websites, but also in-store environments to really do interesting things.
Appreciate. Thank you so much. Guys, stay tuned to Retail Media FC. It was a great episode, as I said, very happy. So, we'll see you soon. Este podcast tem patrocínio da Mega Mídia, especialista em potencializar resultados com inteligência no ponto de venda. Se sua empresa quer transformar o varejo em um canal de mídia lucrativo, com estratégia, execução e resultado, vale conhecer a Mega Mídia, especialista em trade marketing e retail media. A Mega também entrega soluções como digital signage, rádio indoor e ativações que fazem o ponto de venda vender de verdade. megamedia.com.br. Esse episódio é um patrocínio de AppsFlyer. A AppsFlyer é líder global em mensuração e colaboração de dados, com expertise no suporte às maiores marcas do mundo. A Data Collaboration Platform da AppsFlyer permite que varejistas e anunciantes compartilhem dados de forma segura, criem audiências sem precisar escrever uma única linha de código e mensurem o impacto real em vendas em mobile, web e connected TV. Tudo em um ambiente neutro e seguro do ponto de vista de privacidade. Se a sua empresa está pronta para destravar todo o valor de seus dados primários, fale com a AppsFlyer. A Kevel é a infraestrutura por trás de alguma das principais redes de retail media do mundo. Com tecnologia baseada em APIs e inteligência artificial, a Kevel permite que varejistas construam sua própria plataforma de mídia, com total controle sobre seus dados primários, sem depender de soluções engessadas. Mais do que uma empresa de software as a service, a Kevel é uma empresa orientada ao sucesso do cliente. A tecnologia é um meio, a parceria é o diferencial. Varejistas como Chewy, The Home Depot, Dollar General, Sonai, Lyft e El Corte Inglês já utilizam Kevel para lançar e escalar as suas operações de retail media. Kevel, tecnologia, controle e crescimento real em retail media.